Hello and welcome to this primary election debate for Republican candidates from Arizona Congressional District 8. This debate is sponsored by Clean Elections, the state's nonpartisan voter education agency. My name is Mari Rábago, and I'm joined with Steve Goldstein, who will be your co-moderating today's debate.
The format for this debate will probably be familiar to you, but the way we're sharing this debate is part of a brand new effort to support democracy in Arizona. Thanks to a partnership with the Clean Elections Commission and the Arizona Media Association, we're working to make sure these 2024 debates are the most accessible in Arizona history. That means this conversation will air on a long list of local TV stations, radio stations, and digital platforms, including support from local newspapers. It's a shared effort among hundreds of local media brands across Arizona.
That is correct, Steve, and transparency is critical here. That's why this debate has been designed with input from a broad group of journalists in Arizona representing urban and rural communities. And we have tried to keep the rules very simple. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement and 1 minute for a closing statement. Candidates have draw straws to determine the order.
Throughout the debate, Mari and I will pose questions to each candidate, allow them to answer, and then make sure other candidates have a chance to respond. Whenever a question is directed to a specific candidate, only that candidate's microphone will be open. At all other times, every microphone will be open. Thank you to voters across Arizona who've submitted questions for this debate. We've reviewed all of them to make sure every voice is heard. However, no candidates have been given advance access to any of the questions. With that, let's introduce our candidates for this debate. Patrick Briody, Hamadeh, Anthony Kern, Blake Masters, Toma. Trent Franks has declined to participate in tonight's debate.
And Mr. Kern, you have the first opening statement. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Maria. My name is Anthony Kern. My wife Jenny and I, we raised 4 children in our district. We've lived in the district, Congressional District 8, for 35 years. I'm a current state senator that was endorsed by President Trump in the 2022 election. I've served 2 years in the state Senate, 6 years as a state representative. I am a precinct committeeman. I'm a state committeeman. I'm a member at large in Congressional District 8. I was recently elected as a national delegate to the RNC convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am a member of the Arizona Freedom Caucus. Some of the ratings I have a 100 rating by the American Conservative Union, a 100 rating by the Arizona Free Enterprise Club, an A rating by the National Rifle Association. I am staunchly pro-life. I believe life begins at conception. I have a strong, proven conservative record at the state capitol, which I will be bringing to Washington, D.C. I'm a member, or I was a reserve deputy marshal in Tombstone, Arizona, and I'm just, again, a strong, proven conservative that will fight for you, the voters of CD8 in Washington, D.C., as my record clearly shows. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Blake Masters, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Blake Masters. Most of you know me from my Senate run 2 years ago when I took on the national Democrat machine. I think Chuck Schumer and Mark Kelly spent about $100 million trying to take me down. But of course, I also took on the Republican national machine, right? The establishment. Mitch McConnell, if you recall, I'm the guy that Mitch thought was too conservative and too independent-minded. He knew he couldn't control me, so he didn't want me in the Senate. This time, Mitch isn't going to be able to stop me. I think I have a lot to contribute to the U.S. Congress. I'm honored for this chance to run to be your next representative from Arizona's 8th District. I'm a family man. My beautiful wife, Catherine, and I, we have 4 gorgeous boys. I'm a businessman. I'm putting my technology business career on hold because we've got a lot of problems to solve in D.C. The weaponization of government, right? We see what they're doing to President Trump. President Trump delivered peace, prosperity, and a secure border. And 4 years later, Joe Biden's thrown it all away. The Democrats know this, by the way. They know they can't beat Trump at the ballot box, which is why they're trying to take him out with all this bogus lawfare. We can't let that work. But you know what? The number one issue, not just in this race, but facing the entire country, is stopping illegal immigration. I think I've been the boldest candidate, again, not just in this race, but maybe nationwide, talking about how illegal immigration is a cancer. I think cancer is actually the right metaphor for it, because when you have cancer, you have to stop it, right? What happens if you don't do anything? Well, the cancer grows. It metastasizes, and then you die. And that's what happens when you let 20 or 30 million illegal aliens into our country. There's economic problems with it. We'll talk about that. There's public safety and crime problems. We'll talk about that. But my pledge to you is when you send me to D.C., I will be the most conservative, most right-wing, anti-immigration member of Congress. We need to deport 20 or 30 million illegals, because if we don't, we're not going to have a country. Thank you.
Ben Toma, you have the next opening statement, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Ben Toma, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it. I've been living in the district now for 28 years. My wife and I met in the district. Our daughters were born in the district. I built a business in the district, and I'm proud of it. Proud to call Glendale and Peoria home. I will say that, just to level with you, because there's really no point not to at this point. Looking at the stage there, I have no doubt that these gentlemen mean well, and some of them are spending millions of dollars to try to get their message across about what they're going to do in Congress. But I can tell you that in my capacity as the current Speaker of the House and as a member of the House, I've actually done all of these things, including passed and authored the biggest tax cut in state history, the flat tax, universal school choice. We were the first in the nation. I was the first in the nation to get that bill passed, and now that's kicked off just an amazing revolution in parents' rights and children's rights nationwide. You're going to get a chance to vote on border security in November, and that's something that absolutely we have to do something about, because I think we all agree that the federal government has not done their job, has not secured the border, and we absolutely need to do that. In addition to that, I also authored, and we got through the House, the voter ID on the ballot in 2022. So others are talking about what they're going to do. I've actually done it. And if you send me to Congress, I will do exactly what I've done up to this point, which is get big things done, all with very tight margins. The entire time in the House has practically been for the one-vote majority. So it can be done if you have the right people willing to roll up their sleeves to tackle border security, tackle our financial issues, and just do what needs to be done and make sure that our state and our district is prosperous.
Patrick Briody, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Hello, my name's Patrick Briody, and I'm running on change. I've lived in the district with my wife and 3 kids for 25 years. We raised all 3 of our kids in the same home and took care of our parents all in CD8. My in-laws ended up moving 5 doors down. I said, Grandma, Mary, do you know that they're building a church in our neighborhood? She goes, I did not know. She goes, what's the name of the church? I go, St. Thomas More. She's like, oh my God, Patrick, it's a sign. That was the name of our parish in Chicago. Well, the way they were building the subdivision, they got in before us. They were on a corner coming around, and my dad, like a crazy Marine, he just packs up with my mom and drives from Chicago to Vegas. Not knowing anyone, they lived in one of the local casinos for a little bit. They found a rental property in Henderson, a Del Webb property, and lived there for a year. Then I think my dad realized he needs to be closer to family. I'm the only one out west. Realized I need to get Cookie closer to kids, and that's my mom's name. So they ended up living with us for about a month, and then they bought a home in Sun City Grand. It's been a blessing to have our kids grow up with all their parents, their grandparents in the same district, and it's been most enjoyable. I am running on change. I'm running on term limits. Like Bruce Buffer says, it's time. It's time for change. I'm only committing to 3 terms max. I think the magical number needs to be between 16 or 18. That's enough for a generation, whether it's 2 in the House, 2 in the Senate, or all in the House. But I think it needs to be done. Each generation is going to have challenges. They need to be making decisions for their generation. Definitely a sovereign nation must have secure borders. That's the golden rule. You must vet people coming in. We're a land of immigrants, but we have to do it the proper way. It needs to be done the proper way. Those who came here legally are the biggest proponents of it. Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Pat.com.
Mr. Hamadeh, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Abe Hamadeh. I'm a veteran and a former Army Reserve captain and intelligence officer who was deployed overseas and vetted terrorist threats. I'm also a former prosecutor at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. I'm the only candidate in this race endorsed by President Trump and Kari Lake. In my family, we grew up in this district. I went to schools in Peoria, at Terramar, Stetson Hills, and Happy Valley. My family had a small business for 15 years on 35th Avenue in Thunderbird. It was my brother's first job as a lifeguard up in Anthem. And this district really allowed my family to achieve the American dream. At one point, we were on food stamps. I know what it feels like to have to skip a meal. And I know many of you do too now in this Joe Biden economy. But if you look around, our country's collapsing. We have a wide open border that's been opened intentionally by this Biden administration. And that's why on day 1, when I'm in Congress, I'm going to introduce legislation to classify the drug cartels as a foreign terrorist organization. we have to go to war against these monsters. I know better than anybody that our elections are completely compromised, and I can't wait to join President Trump in Washington to fix our elections once and for all. And having served overseas in the military, I know that we are on the brink of entering World War III. If you look at what's happening, we've alienated our allies like Israel and have emboldened our enemies like Iran. We need to return back to an America-first foreign policy. And now our economy is hurting so many people. Inflation is on the rise, our dollar is being devalued. Nobody can afford to live in our country anymore. But I think we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. But ultimately, I don't care what the media says about me or what some of my opponents say about me. I'm a happy warrior. I say that because the best warriors fight for what they love. I love my country. And when America's under attack, send a soldier to fight back. I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you all. Mr. Toma, let's start with the first question of this debate. Do you define what's going on right now at the southern border as a crisis? And what are the first couple of things you would do immediately and propose to do in Congress if you were elected?
Certainly, it absolutely is a crisis. I mean, for anyone that hasn't actually been down there to see it for themselves, I would encourage you to do it. Of course, the reality of it is, not only is it a crisis, but it's a manufactured crisis by this administration. Let's not forget that one of the very first things that Joe Biden, I think it was actually on day one, he passed numerous executive orders. I think it was 64 by last count. It might have been more than that, so you'll have to check me on that. But the reality of it is he's caused this problem. The border was secure under President Trump. Now, it's never perfect. There's never a perfect situation, but it was secure under President Trump, and this president has deliberately opened the borders. And unfortunately, Democrats all the way around have continued to push and to defend these policies. In our very own state, here in Arizona, we had Governor Hobbs mentioned in their State of the State, with me sitting beside her, that she wanted to do something about the border, acknowledging that it's a problem. But instead, the only thing that they've actually done up to this point has been to ask for more money from the federal government. In other words, to advertise to the rest of the world, come over here, come, we will have resources to take care of you. And you're now seeing it. You don't even have to take our word for it. You can look at the mayors of places like Chicago and New York City that have said, enough, we can't do this anymore. It is not okay what is happening. We are causing a humanitarian disaster. On top of that, we're enabling the cartels to get away with drug trafficking, human trafficking, prostitution, all kinds of crazy things that are happening that are just awful. Just go to the border and ask to see the rape tree, and then have a discussion about how this is not a crisis, or the fentanyl that's coming across the border. 100% crisis. First thing I would do is make sure that we secure the border. We have to do that first and foremost, because you can't do anything else about illegal immigration or any of these other issues until you secure the border.
Mr. Masters, you have 1 minute for a response.
Absolutely. I mean, to call it a crisis is an understatement. You know, I think it's an invasion. I agree we need to classify the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. I think we need to triple the size of Border Patrol, at least, right? And I know that as soon as he takes the oath of office, January 20th of next year, President Trump is going to re-implement all of his successful, amazing policies that actually gave us border security, right? When you think about the border, it's like it's impossible to quantify the magnitude of damage that Biden is doing to this country. I literally think that Joe Biden has committed treason by throwing open our southern border. Some people think that's too extreme. I think what Biden is doing at the border is extreme, right? Laken Riley, she should be alive today. She was murdered by a Venezuelan gangbanger that Biden let in. Rachel Morin, that beautiful mother of 5, murdered, killed, strangled by an El Salvadorian gangbanger. These people don't belong in our country. It's an invasion, and send me to Congress so we can actually do something about it.
Mr. Kern, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So under President Trump, it was the only time that our border was secure. If you remember back then when President Trump was in office, a lot of Republicans actually are the ones that held him back from getting the money that he needed to seal that border, that southern border. Now under a Democrat administration, you have $160 billion going to Ukraine to protect their borders, but you do not have that money going to our southern border. Why? Because everything the Democrats touch and everything the Uniparty touches, they destroy. What is being done at our southern border with 165 different nations coming in, what you saw on October 7th and what you saw on 9/11, that is going to happen here. We have terrorists in this country that are set to destroy destroy our nation, and it is all because of the Biden administration and the uniparty. And so we've got to elect President Trump. I will stand behind him to shut that border, to deport all the illegals and send them back to Mexico, and then they can find their way back to their home country.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hamadeh, you have 60 seconds.
Absolutely. It's more than a crisis. It's a disaster, and everybody knows it. You have to be lying in the media to not recognize it. I remember the media used to come after me for calling it an invasion a few years ago, but they're not doing that anymore nowadays. But if you look at, I'm an intelligence officer. Our border is a national security crisis. If you actually see what's happening, we've had 30,000 Chinese nationals cross our southern border over the last 6 months. That's scary, because as an intelligence officer, you have to think like the enemy. The enemy is looking at our border and they're going to exploit it. That's what's happening. And under this administration, they're not following the laws. You know, people talk about we have to pass these laws. In many ways, we just have to follow the law. But I do want to introduce legislation to go after the drug cartels, who are really monsters. They do beheadings. They're very nasty people. We have to classify them as a foreign terrorist organization. We have to go to war against them. We went to war against ISIS in Syria and Iraq, and yet here the threat is here at home. We have to be careful and we have to fight back.
Mr. Briody?
You have to use everything in your arsenal. That means drones. That means more boots on the ground. That means intel. Abe's right. There's a reporter, boots on the ground in Central America, that shows planes coming in from China. At that airport, they literally walk across the street. They go into a hotel. They go into the restaurant. The menu's in Chinese. From there, they hop on a bus and they're brought right to Tijuana and they cross over San Diego. They're right. He's right. They're military-age men, basically. That's planned. That's set up. That's not right. Fentanyl, you have to address that, and you can. Fentanyl is used in medicine, in hospitals nationwide, worldwide. You have to talk to the president and say, President Xi, you need to stop the fake fentanyl coming in. It's that simple. Thank you very much. And we can handle it, though.
We're going to stay with you, Mr. Briody, and we're going to continue with the next question. So in November, Arizona voters will have the opportunity to vote and given more responsibility of an immigration enforcement to law enforcement. What do you think about this? And do you believe that that would trigger some federal action?
So your question is, enforcement on the ground would have more?
The voters in Arizona will have this November the opportunity to vote and given more responsibility to law enforcement to enforce immigration laws. What do you think about this?
I think it's an excellent idea. I had a boss many years ago. He says you have to be close to the kitchen to taste the food. That's so true. You got to knock on doors and talk to people. You have to be relying on those the front and center people that are there day in, day out. A lot of them have taken their life because they're trapped. You know, they're trying to help humanity at the same time they're seeing the worst of humanity. So, hands down, I'm 100%. I think that would be a great idea. And you need to share information with others that's working, you know? Anything that you have to try, and if it works, you have to multiply it elsewhere, you know, Texas, California. So it's something that it can no longer kick the can down the road. Congress has to write that bill to make it to come here. You want the best and brightest minds to come to your country.
5 seconds.
Hands down. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks, ma'am.
Mr. Hamadeh, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Absolutely, the voters should vote on that measure. Right now, it's an act of desperation when the federal government is not following the law. What is the point of the federal government if they're not securing our border? It's not just the southern border. If you look at the northern border with Canada, there's a lot of people crossing into our country illegally also. But if you look at the actions that Texas Governor Greg Abbott has done in Texas, he's actually reduced the flow of immigration over there, and they've actually started to shift westward into New Mexico and Arizona because they have taken measures into their own hands at the state level. So this is predictable when you have a federal government that's completely lawless. You know, some of these illegal immigrants, their federal cases for their asylum are not even until 2030. Can you imagine that? They've overwhelmed the courts. They're now utilizing all the money of taxpayers, and they're really abusing the system. This is why we have to start deportation. We got to get President Trump back into office because our country cannot survive with a wide open border like Biden has done to us.
Mr. Kern, what is your opinion in this regard? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you. So I had the honor of voting for that, I believe it was an HCR in the state Senate just a few weeks ago to allow voters the choice to basically protect themselves. Many Republicans support law enforcement. Many Democrats do not. So the reason why we have it go to the voters is because Governor Katie Hobbs failed to, or she vetoed the first bill. And so we have an issue. As someone stated on this platform here, many Americans have died. Recently, a 12-year-old girl, a mother of 4 or 5 children, jogging down a jogging path, gets raped and brutally murdered by an illegal immigrant. We've got to stop. It is the job of the government to protect its citizens. The Biden administration is not doing it, and I believe for the number one reason is because it is a voting bloc to the Democrat Party with the federal-only ballots. And so they're not protecting the citizens. The Republicans are asking the voters to vote for that in November, and I ask the the voters of Arizona to pass that piece of legislation.
Mr. Master, you're next, and you have 1 minute.
I hope it passes, and it's really sad that it's come to this. You know, immigration and protecting our border is supposed to be a federal prerogative, but when Joe Biden and the national Democrats in charge refuse to do their job, right? It's not like they're trying really hard to secure our border and just failing, and that would be bad enough. That would be costly enough. No, Biden's not even trying, right? Day one, he surrendered our border, and the feds aren't doing a thing about it. So I think we should empower our law enforcement at the state and local level to try to solve the problem. But that would be a Band-Aid. That would be a temporary measure. What we really need to do is to elect President Trump again, get him back in the White House, and I think he was the best immigration president in our lifetime, maybe ever. He knew that America belongs to Americans, right? We can accept some legal immigrants, but you got to come the right way. Trump knew how to get border security done. And when you ask rank and file Border Patrol members, and I have talked to a lot of them, they give Trump an A+. They give Biden an F because they know he's just not letting them do the jobs that they want to do to protect us.
Mr. Toma, finally, your response, and you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Certainly, I mean, if we're having this conversation, and let's be clear here, because the federal government has failed to do their job, so wholeheartedly agree with that point. And it is sad, the situation. But as the sponsor of HCR 2060, which is what we're talking about, I can tell you that I am proud to have sponsored it, to do our part, what we can at the state level to make up for and to give options to individuals and to law enforcement here to protect themselves against what's happening. Look, I'm not anti-immigrant. I'm an immigrant myself, for those that know my story. Of course, our family did it the right way. And as I think was mentioned on this stage before, you're going to see that we're going to be more wholeheartedly for immigration, but immigration done the right way, not illegal immigration the way it's currently done. So HCR 2060, I hope it passes. I think it will come November. And but even more importantly, again, we need to absolutely fix this issue at the federal level, first and foremost by securing the border.
Mr. Hamadeh, let's change to election security, that topic, which I know is one of your favorites. You're already smiling. Are U.S. elections safe and secure?
Well, if you just saw what happened in the county yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, the county apparently gave a temporary worker, stole a key fob that had access to our elections. But let me tell you, I know our elections are not secure because District 8 was hit the hardest in November of 2022 with those machines going down. My race was supposedly called by 280 votes out of 2.5 million, yet there are 9,000 uncounted ballots in that race. And yet we're still in the courts, believe it or not. And yet, you know, we know it's a compromised system too, because Carrie Lake, she got an expedited appeal and she actually got multiple trials, and yet we're still asking for a real trial because the government withheld the evidence. But no, it's really sad that the people in charge who should be giving confidence in our elections ran a disastrous elections, and they haven't been held accountable by the courts, by the media. I think people should be asking, you know, what happened yesterday with this supposed Democrat Party activist, that's what every indication shows him, that he stole a key fob that has access to all of the machines. Very suspicious, very suspicious. But we will secure elections with President Trump. That's why I'm proud to have his endorsement.
Mr. Kern?
Thank you. Great question. So our elections are not secure. And anybody that believes that really ought to rethink their strategy. Look at 2016. In 2016, the Democrats showed everyone how the elections could be stolen through the Dominion machines. They showed everyone how they could be stolen through paper ballots and through the whole process. Everyone in Congress, every Democrat in Congress showed the American people, because they hated President Trump, how the elections were stolen. So fast forward to 2020. I do believe the 2020 election was stolen. And there's enough evidence to choke a horse, but there's spineless judges that refuse to look at the evidence and rule because they don't want to be targeted by the media. So you fast forward to 2020. So what you have in America right now is you have two parties,
10 seconds, Mr.
2016, 2020, saying our elections are not secure. The Democrats would have you believe 2020 was the most transparent ever. We need to fix our elections, and that will be done through the states. And I fully support anything we can do to make our elections transparent.
Mr. Masters, I'm going to broaden the question a bit for you because, as you mentioned, you ran in 2022, went against Mark Kelly for the U.S. Senate. You were given credit by a lot of people for calling Senator Kelly and conceding, saying, good race, congratulations, you won. Were you concerned about that particular race being stolen? Were you concerned that particular race wasn't safe and secure? Can you give us a broader answer related to the broad question I asked the other gentleman?
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, I wish I had won my race. I don't think I did. I tried really hard, but I went up against the National Democrat machine. It felt like charging a machine gun nest in a way. That does not mean the election was perfectly run. Far from it. Okay, do we have the worst elections in the world? I don't think so. I think North Korea's are more corrupt. I think Zimbabwe's are more corrupt. The Democratic Republic of Congo, right? It's not that democratic, turns out. But we don't have the best elections either. In fact, the United States election system is probably somewhere in the middle, which is pathetic when you think about it. I remember what it felt like to wake up on Election Day, November 2022, to 30 or 40 texts from people saying, Blake, we're trying to vote for you. We're trying to vote for Abe and Carrie. We can't because the machines didn't work. And of course, the machines didn't work. And I don't know if that was simple negligence or something worse. I couldn't prove that. What I do know is I was the first candidate to sue. Right? I sued to try to get the polls open longer. And had that relief been granted, I think Abe would be Attorney General instead of the crazy communist lady Chris Mays. I think Kerry would be governor, and we'd be in a lot better spot right now. So election integrity, I'm in favor of it. I wish we had more of it. You know, and there's a real problem when people can vote in this country without ID. So send me to Congress, and I will make sure we pass a law that says you need to have an ID in order to vote.
Mr. Toma, 60 seconds on this. Are our elections safe and secure in the U.S.?
You know, I actually agree. I think that there's no doubt that if you look at what happened in 2020 and in 2022, that there were definitely the scales were tipped in one direction. And you look at big tech and what they've done. You look at the Hunter Biden laptop situation, for one example. Also the printers that was mentioned a moment ago. There are definitely issues. And, you know, any system can be improved. That's the reality. And any system that has human beings that are part of it can be improved and should be. So I think we should always strive to make elections more secure. I think that's a worthy pursuit that we should absolutely focus on in the future. Having said that, I also think as Republicans, we absolutely need to be looking forward to this election coming up. We're four months or so away from the general election in November, and it's incredibly important that President Trump win and that we actually focus on some of the Republican policies that have made us attractive to voters in the first place.
Thank you. Mr. Briody, are elections safe and secure?
Voter integrity, it's one of my bullets. You have to go by what the law is now and how to vote, but you know, our kids from K to 8, we walked down the street to that school, Highland Lakes, and I didn't know who was Democrat or Republican. Really didn't care. Everyone was in a good mood. I know people were counting it. It was being sealed and then going to the next place. So local precincts with oversight by everyone or places of worship or school, I think is the right way. I think we need to make it a voting holiday. I really do. If it's that day in November, there's no change in the Constitution. I personally thought maybe the Friday before Labor Day. If people are going on holiday, maybe start Thursday afternoon. But Argentina can do it, France can do it, Florida can do it. You can vote by paper ballot, have it counted the same day, and have your results.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Masters, despite a series of court rulings and no proven history of stolen elections in this country, why do you think the election of 2020 and 22 are questionable?
Well, 2022 we just talked about, right? Tons of people went to go vote at the polls, and then the machines don't work. So forgive people if they don't have confidence. I mean, it doesn't work, right? That's really, really crazy. 2020, I think the primary way that the Democrats were able to install Joe Biden in the White House, and I use that word specifically, install, I think President Trump had the hearts and minds of the people in 2020. It was big tech putting their thumb on the scale. Right, the Hunter Biden laptop story. Hunter Biden, man, pray for his soul. That guy is messed up. And there was this laptop, and the FBI knew about it. They concealed it, had all this evidence of all these crimes, and I don't mean ticky-tack gun crimes like Hunter Biden just got rung up for. I mean like real serious Biden family corruption stuff. And this was stuff that the American public deserved to know about. And big tech namely Google and Facebook, change their algorithms in the weeks before the election. They boost Biden content, they suppress
10
Trump
seconds.
content, and call me old-fashioned. It shouldn't work that way. The American people should decide who the next president is, not big tech oligarchs. I know more about that than any candidate, and when I'm in D.C., I'm going to fix that.
Mr. Kern, what do you think in this regards?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Despite no proven, ruling of
Okay.
stolen elections, do you think that those elections, 2020 and 22, are questionable, and why?
100%. 100%. I mean, I was out there in 2022. I was out there in 2020. For years, we have known that elections have been stolen. How do you get more votes than voters? I remember back in the Bush-Gore days in 2000, when in Ohio there was a congressional district where they had more votes than voters. How does that happen? Dead people voting. For years they're voting. People getting multiple ballots mailed to their home. Right now there is talk of the Biden administration giving illegals Social Security numbers to vote in this 2024 election. So that is wrong. There are laws against that, but the Democrats don't care. They've been stealing elections for years. The 2022 and the 2020 elections were absolutely compromised. There is ample evidence. There's video of people shutting windows and bringing in suitcases of
seconds.
ballots. In our own state, there's been many problems. So we need to get back to one day, one vote, paper ballot, precinct voting, and get our elections results that same night.
Mr. Hamadeh, what do you think in this regards?
Well, I'm still in my election lawsuit, and it's quite, ironic that everybody says there's no evidence. We have the evidence. We know there's 9,000 uncounted ballots. We know that Katie Hobbs, in her position of Secretary of State, abused her position by not letting the court know about a huge recount discrepancy in Pinal County. But it wasn't just her. It was also Rachel Mitchell, the Maricopa County attorney. She withheld knowledge about those provisional ballots. We know exactly what's going on. It's not just the machines going down. It's not just their mail-in ballots that are a mess. It's not just the voter rolls. It's death by 1,000 cuts. That's how they're doing it. I agree. We have to go back to one-day voting. It's absolutely insane that some states vote 45 days before Election Day. We have to really clean this up. I served overseas in the military. I know how special voting is. And when you spread democracy around, you see them dip their finger in ink. They're so proud to vote. And yet we don't have confidence in our elections here in Arizona because of incompetent and corrupt officials. I hope the judiciary wakes up and counts those 9,000 votes and removes this illegitimate attorney general from office.
Mr. Briody, do you really think the elections of 2020 and 22 had been stolen?
Federally, when you look at the federal government, 51 intelligence agencies signed on with a letter that Russia colluded. The Steele dossier. A billionaire walked in with the kitchen sink, and it cost them billions of dollars for free speech. God bless them, because it exposed the Twitter files. We can read. Everything's out there digitally forever. And you know what? The timeline of finding stuff out is going to get faster and faster. So Americans need to have confidence in the system. Whatever the system is, they need to feel confident about it. But I think our own country did more damage and interfered with the election than anyone outside of our country. And that's sad. It really is.
Thank you. Mr. Toma, finally, what is your opinion in this regards?
Sure. Well, I've already talked about the fact that big tech definitely put their finger on the scale and turned things their way for President Biden, of course. I will say that in addition to that, I've just taken us back to 2020. If you remember, there were also a number of judges that really broke laws, and in many cases broke state laws, and allowed same-day registration, allowed registration well past the deadline, and violated much of our state laws in order to actually put their finger on the scale even further on this issue. And so when you have situations like this where other branches of government abuse their power and do things that are clearly found to be illegal, then how could you not say that there were issues with the election? The reality of it is there were issues with the election. Now, COVID was blamed for much of it, but that doesn't make it right.
Okay. Mr. Masters, you have 60 seconds for this one. 2 years ago this week, the U.S. Supreme Court upended Roe v. Wade with the Dobbs ruling. If you were in Congress, what would you like to see at that level as far as abortion goes? Would you be accepting of any abortions? Would you want complete restrictions, any exceptions?
First, I want to say I am thrilled that Roe v. Wade was overturned, right? And I think President Trump deserves a lot of credit. Those 3 justices that he appointed that got that done, I think those were inspired choices, and I think that's a really great decision. I'm pro-life. I'm proud to be pro-life. I will never apologize for being pro-life. My wife and I, again, have 4 beautiful boys, and I think children are a gift from God. I really do. Now, some people think post-Roe, now that we got rid of Roe versus Wade, the issue should just go back to the states. And obviously the state legislatures are going to debate and come up with policies for their states. And as a voter, I will back conservative state legislators like Anthony Kern who support life. Now, what should we do at the federal level? I do believe there's a role. I think that at a minimum, the federal government should have a backstop, right? Because I don't believe we should let California or Oregon go in and
10
allow
seconds,
executions of babies at 8 months and 30 days. No partial birth abortion. It may take 5 or 10 years to get this passed, by the way, but I think a federal backstop of 15 weeks is common sense that we can all eventually get behind.
Okay, Mr. Kern, your opening statement, you talked about being pro-life.
Yes.
Would you accept any level of abortion at the federal level? Would you like to see more restrictions? What would you like to see?
So I'm a Christian conservative, and I believe the Bible says that, before you in the womb, I knew you. And so life begins at conception, and that is a human life. And America, one of America's biggest issues is they need to get that right in order to completely turn our country around and get it back on the right track. I want to thank President Trump. I want to thank the U.S. Supreme Court for overturning Roe versus Wade. I'll never forget listening to Glenn Beck, and he was listening to the arguments on TV, I guess, and he just gasped when they actually overturned. Sean Foyt was at the U.S. Capitol, and he was praying at the Supreme Court. So there's many people that believe life begins at conception. I do think that the states need to make that decision, but I will never change on the pro-life issue because these are human beings. I think Americans need to really look at what an abortion does. We all want women's health care, but an abortion kills a human being, and we have got to get that right, America.
Mr. Toma, on the issue of abortion at the federal level?
Certainly. Look, my record on abortion speaks for itself. I stood against that being overturned in the Arizona House multiple times. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, what happened, and the rule of 31, that's what happens in our legislature. Having said that, I will say that, if the question ultimately comes down to is should there be a limit to abortion at the federal level in the case of those states that have gone way too far, I think it was mentioned before, those that want to go to a partial birth abortion or something just barbaric like that, then yes, I would support that. I would support it wholeheartedly because I think that's barbaric. And look, my wife and I have been blessed with 6 daughters. 5 of them are ours biologically. They're all amazing and they're all blessings from God. And as such, I think we need to absolutely protect life. And as a culture, if we continue to allow death to reign, we will reap those those punishments that come with it.
Mr. Hamadeh, abortion at the federal level?
Laws alone are not going to change morality. I applaud President Trump for what he did by appointing those strong conservative Supreme Court justices. For a long time, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg thought that it should not be at the federal level. So, I appreciate that it's back at the state level. Now it's going to be up to each individual state. And so I don't believe the federal government has a role. I do think in Congress, my job is to make sure that money is not going to Planned Parenthood in any of these abortion clinics. But, if you look at here in Arizona, we have a lawless government. You saw Chris Mays and Katie Hobbs. They both said they didn't really care what the Supreme Court was going to say. They weren't going to abide by it anyway. So text on a piece of paper is not going to solve this. We have to look at what's happening. Europe, which is pretty godless, they ban abortion after 12 weeks. And yet here in America, it seems like it's passing all over the state. So it's going to take us time, but I do think it's a fight worth having. But it's going to take a cultural fight here at the state level.
Mr. Briody, you have 60 seconds.
There's some boulders in your life that I won't change, and I'm pro-life. I follow my faith. I do believe, like others here, that life begins at conception. I think you need to educate the young. We've been getting a lot of cards in the mail regarding are you pro-life and stuff. I think I'm up to about 26. I returned 25 of them with answers. One, she didn't have an address, so I couldn't do that. I ran out of cards, so I started using birthday cards. And I just put, if one young adult changes their mind, this could be a lifetime on earth of sending a birthday card. So we need to show the young ultrasounds. When my wife had our children, what an ultrasound looks over decades. And passionately and lovingly, never give up. But it's a good fight to have. But you have to have it with passion and love. And you can show through technology what a child looks like throughout the whole time.
Well, gentlemen, let's speak politics. How's that? So we'll start with you, Mr. Toma. Former President Trump was recently found guilty by a jury of 34 counts. How strongly do you support Donald Trump in his run for presidency this term?
Well, I think it's a sham what happened. I mean, for those of you that don't know my history, I was born in a communist country where government institutions were used to persecute anyone that disagreed with the leadership of the party. And that's what's happening here. And if people can't see that, it's almost amazing to me watching, you know, and watching this happen, watching the weaponization of our institutions against a former president, much less what could they do to us, the average regular Joe. I just can't even imagine the fact that people are not seeing this for what it is. It is a sham, and as such, I think we all need to stand up and say, no, enough is enough. The people will speak in November. President Trump will be elected. I support him, and I'm done with Biden's policy, and I think the average person in Arizona for sure is, and hopefully the entire country as well.
Thank you, Mr. Toma. And Mr. Masters, your turn to respond. Do you support?
I support President Trump 100%. And what we saw was a lawless kangaroo court, right? You got all these kangaroo courts coming after him because they know they cannot beat President Trump at the ballot box, right? The Democrats have nothing to run on. And everything they accused Trump of, by the way, Hillary Clinton actually did, right? So it's all just projection on behalf of the left. The only thing President Trump is guilty of is making America great again. And he's going to do it again. We're going to give him that chance by electing him resoundingly in November. I don't believe that the American people for a second actually believe this stuff. People remember, it wasn't that long ago that you didn't have to worry about inflation, right? What was inflation when President Trump was in? It was like less than 2%. You could actually afford breakfast cereal and eggs for your kids. You didn't have to worry about border security. You didn't have to worry about your 12-year-old being raped and strangled in the neighborhood park. And now you have to worry about all that because Joe Biden. So this is a kangaroo court. Trump is being persecuted, but he's going to persevere. We've got his back, and he's going to make America great again.
Mr. Kern, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Yeah, Trump's a fighter. I'm a fighter. All you have to do is look at the numbers and the money he raised right after the sham indictment, and you'll see that the American people, they aren't as dumb as the Democrats think they are. So I am also being drugged through the mud the same way President Trump is. I've had the FBI at my door, the DOJ at my door, and the state attorney general at my door. And I'll tell you, it doesn't feel good. We've had to put up security cameras. My wife has to keep the windows shut. We know when they're out front. We have video cams of them. And it's not easy being in that situation. But I know that Jesus Christ has my back. And I know that I did nothing wrong, and I know that our government is weaponized against the American citizens. I am honored to be that person that is a target of the FBI, the DOJ, and the Attorney General, just as Trump is, because he is appointed for such a time as this. I am here for such a time as this, and I would rather me go through it than the voters of Congressional District 8. So I'm honored by that. I will fight for you in this, and we've got to de-weaponize our judicial system and our federal government.
Thank you. Mr. Hamadeh? You have 1 minute.
Absolutely. Well, I'm the only candidate endorsed by President Trump, and it's because he knows I'm a courageous warrior. We have to fight back against this weaponized legal system. It's an absolute disgrace. Especially, these are people who should know better. These are prosecutors. You know, they went to law school. They're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. What kind of message are we sending to recent law school graduates? That it's okay to go after your political opponents this way? My family came from places like Syria and Venezuela. I know where this road leads us to. It's Marxism. It's communism. This is scary. It's not just those 34 felony count indictments. If you look, remember, the E. Jean Carroll bogus lawsuit, too, a couple $100 million. Same with going after Rudy Giuliani, going after pro-life protesters, locking them up in jail. Yet there's no accountability to the BLM rioters, no accountability for those illegal immigrants in New York City that are terrorizing the streets.
10 seconds.
It's an absolute disgrace. We have to return back to the rule of law. That's why President Trump's endorsed me, and that's why I'm going to stand with him as we fix our country once and for all.
Mr. Briody, 1 minute.
What I've seen most recently is the boomerang effect. Be careful what you ask for, what you wish for. Harry Reid, go nuclear on the Supreme Court. What happened there? I wish the three branches would stay in their lane. I don't want a blue robe. I don't want a red robe. I want a black robe. I don't want a president who says I have a pen in my hand and a phone. I don't want executive orders coming out from day one. Stay in your lanes. Stay in your lanes. Yeah, it's criminal. What they're doing is putting him back in office. You can see by the small donations he's getting that people are fed up. And they're fed up. It's Americans that are fed up of all race, creed, and color and sex. They've had enough. Stay in your lanes. It was set up for 3 separate branches of government. It should stay that way.
Thank you.
Mr. Hamadeh. District 8 has a lot of retirees. They are concerned about entitlements and entitlement reform, specifically Social Security and Medicare. Would you attempt to reform those? Would you attempt to privatize those if you were in Congress?
Absolutely not. These are entitlements that they're owed. You know, in many ways, they paid into Social Security, and yet I believe we should have a cost of living increase for Social Security recipients. If you look at inflation's out of control, and yet the cost of living adjustment hasn't matched inflation. So, you know, it's absolutely unbelievable. This Joe Biden economy has made it so difficult for anybody to live. You know, and if you look at, these are people on their fixed incomes. They're seeing their car insurance rising. They're seeing their home insurance rising. So no, we cannot touch entitlements. We're spending all this money sending it overseas to Ukraine, a couple $100 billion where a government has no ability to audit the money. You know, it's an absolute sham what's happening. But we have to protect Social Security. I know President Trump has pledged to do that, and I plan to do that when I'm in Congress as well.
Mr. Kern, you have 1 minute on that.
100%. Yeah, CD8 voters should not worry about their Social Security. They tax when it's going in and they tax it when it's going out. We need to eliminate the Social Security tax, in my opinion. Leave it alone. That is money that they have put aside. Government should not be spending it. It should be in a bank account at the federal level, and just leave it at that. So the reason why it is a big concern is because of the inflation and the high costs of food and gas and car insurance and mortgages and all of the above. People are pinching every penny because of the current Biden administration. When President Trump was in office, things were very good. Inflation was at an all-time low. Jobs were at an all-time high. The border was secure. People didn't have to worry about their Social Security. But now with Joe Biden spending us into oblivion, growing the federal government, opening our southern border, inflation out the roof, Americans have to be concerned. Our district voters, when Anthony Kern is elected to Congress, will not have to worry about their Social Security.
Thank you. Mr. Masters, entitlement reform, where do you stand on that?
I'll be super clear. We will never cut Social Security. I actually think entitlement is an apt word for it, right? You paid into the system. They're your benefits. You are literally, by law, entitled to them. And the U.S. government absolutely is going to honor its commitments. Okay, the one change I want to make to Social Security is we need to stop taxing it, right? Any changes we make to the system have to result in the same amount or more money getting into your pocket. That's what we owe our seniors. So no cuts ever. And Joe Biden is by far and away the biggest threat to your retirement today, right? The Bidenflation. Again, a couple short years ago, we didn't have to worry about inflation because President Trump and the great America First economic policies resulted in low inflation, low unemployment, real wage gains. People were actually making more money. It was getting easier to raise a family, getting easier to retire, not harder. So we need to elect President Trump, and in Congress, I will 100% protect Social Security. Thank you.
Mr. Toma, what would you like to see on entitlement reform, if anything?
I actually agree 100% with the notion that we should not ever even talk about cutting Social Security benefits. On top of that, I wholeheartedly agree that it should be tax-free. The income from Social Security should be tax-free as well. But here's the thing. Math is a thing. You have to make the budgets work. And in my experience, I can tell you the best way to do that is to make sure that you have a good regulatory environment. People are willing to invest. People are willing to invest is a good word. And then you're going to have growth. And once you have growth, that solves many of our problems. Now, the temptation, of course, will be to continue to grow government, which is what you've seen at the federal government over and over again with these agencies that just get bloated, and there's all these different programs that get bloated. And instead, we should be focused on making sure that we have a healthy bottom line where we can pay our commitments long term, and then only after that, and by the way, that would probably include some sort of a path to a balanced budget amendment, which we're going to have to get to at the federal level eventually. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to afford paying our bills, and that there's no other way to protect Social Security.
Mr. Briody, Medicare, Social Security, would you protect them? Would you reform them?
Protected. I was just asked this question on Saturday, and it was about 3 paragraphs was the question. And it's never bad to say, I'm not sure, but let me get back to you, you know. And I'm at the end of the baby boomers. And my first job with Uncle Sam taking out money, I was 14 years old. Yes, I want that. And absolutely, you shouldn't tax it. We tax you on everything. We tax you when you die. So that being said, I went to my daughter, who's a JAG. She's stationed in Ramstein, but she's doing a leadership course at Maxwell. And she was driving back, visiting friends from Atlanta. And I said, Bridget, I'd like to send this to you because I'm not 100% sure. I can research it. And she knew. She says, many lawyers went, no, 1937. This was constitutional. That's it. End of story. End of debate. And the way the wording's a little different, and the 2 cases that they wanted me to rep. So I emailed back to the association that
You have
had
10
that
seconds,
meeting
sir.
and explained, here's the law. So, but the next generation, let them make that decision, you know? Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And it's time for closing statements. Each of you will have 1 minute, and keep us on time. We will politely cut you off if you run over. Anthony Kern, you have your first chance for that 1 minute closing statement.
Thank you. Before I forget, my website is votekern.com or kernforcongress.com. Please look at it. Check out the media page. Some of it you'll laugh, but look at where I stand on health care and immigration and elections and Social Security and all the above. But here's the bottom line, folks. America is going down the wrong track. Everyone feels it. Everyone sees it. A lot of people just don't know what to do. So I ask the voters of CD8 for 2 things. 1, pray to God over our country. The Bible says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, I will heal their land. I firmly believe if we do that as a country, I believe Tennessee just implemented prayer and fasting in their state. I think that's a great idea. We need to do that as a country because morality needs to come back in. That's why we find ourselves lost. And secondly, vote
5
for
seconds,
a
sir.
fighter. A proven conservative fighter.
Okay.
You will never have to guess where Anthony
Thank you,
Kern
sir.
is. Kernforcongress.com.
Blake Masters, you have the next closing statement. 1 minute, sir.
Thank you. I'm Blake Masters. I'm running for Congress to support President Trump's agenda and to stop illegal immigration. Again, I think that illegal immigration is a cancer that is killing our country. It makes everything expensive. You know, you think the cost of housing has gone up? Well, it has. Do you know why? Partly because you've got 20 or 30 million illegals in our country who shouldn't be here. Well, most of them aren't homeless, right? They're living under some roof, and that costs money. That drives up the cost of housing, and you, the taxpayer, very often are paying for it. It makes our streets more dangerous, right? I have 4 kids. You've got kids and grandkids too. Our kids, our American children, are literally less safe in the streets now because of Biden's open borders policies, right? And finally, illegal immigration is changing our culture. Okay, if you import the third world, you get the third world.
10 seconds.
I don't want that kind of future for my kids or your kids or grandkids. So send me to Congress. I will be the most hardcore anti-illegal immigration congressman representing you.
Thank you.
you.
Mr. Ben Toma, you have 1 minute for closing statement.
Thank you. Washington is broken. Congress can't get anything done. That's why you see presidents really rule, if you will, through executive orders. You know, I'm honored to be endorsed by current Representative Debbie Lesko, by Governor Jan Brewer, by the Arizona Police Association, by Senator John Kyle, and so many others, because they know what we all know. We have major issues that we have to tackle. Illegal immigration, border security, financial issues that we touched on a little bit today as well. And they trust, and as well as the average citizen in District 8, trusts that actions speak louder than words. You know, I'm a Christian as well, wholeheartedly believe in certain proverbs, and one that I stand by 100% is that you'll know them by their fruit. Look at the actual record. I'm the only one here that's actually gotten these tough things done with 1 vote majorities.
10 seconds,
I can do the same in Congress. bentoma.com, again, bentoma.com. Appreciate your vote.
Patrick Briody, you have 60 seconds.
I'm endorsed by no one, but also I'm beholden to no one, except for the constituents in CD8. I put this tweet out there in 2017, and it goes like this: I never wanted my president to fail. What I do want is drain the swamp. It equals term limits. Burst the bubble. Institutions encourage debate. And last, mainstream media search for truth and report the facts. A new year, 2017, still holds true today. I want to thank you. And I will go anywhere to talk to anyone anytime, any faith of worship. I'd be more than welcome to come. I'm Christian as well. And the parish near me where I grew up in the early 60s, the father wrote this song. And it went, he had to come up with it. He wrote it in a day in the basement with the choir. And it's, they'll know we are Christians by our love. And we need to unite. We need to unite as a party, as a country, as in faith. So thank you very much, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Abraham Hamadeh, you have 1 minute for the closing statement.
Thank you. I know many of you feel helpless, are scared, are angry, and you should be. Our government has been stolen from us. If you look around us, it feels like upside down land. Now, I've never talked more about transgenders ever in my life except the last 3 years. Now, this is a narrative that they're pushing on us. It's very odd. Our border is completely open. Our elections are compromised. But let me tell you, we are more powerful than they can ever even imagine. For too long, you haven't had a voice. I'm running for Congress to not just give you a seat at the table, but to put you at the head of the table. This government belongs to you, we the people. And it's time we elect strong, courageous warriors who are going to fight for our interests. I'm proud to be endorsed by President Trump and Kari Lake. They're my friends, they're strong fighters.
10 seconds.
And I'd be honored to have your vote for Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, each one of you. And this wraps today's debate with the Republican candidates for Arizona Congressional District 8. As a reminder, the Arizona primary election is on July 30th, and early voting starts July 3rd. Or registered voters can participate in the primary, including independents.
There are a lot of offices up for election this year, so we'll keep hosting debates through the November general election. Head to azmedia.org to see a list of every local media partner, plus upcoming debates, and where you can find them on TV, radio, and digital platforms. You can also see the full debate schedule, learn more about clean elections, and submit questions for future debates by heading to azcleanelections.gov. On behalf of our partners at Clean Elections, the Arizona Media Association, Reister, and Bitfire Studios, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys, everyone.
Thanks,
Appreciate
everybody.
it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hold on, hot mic.